I'd like to thank my parents and my grandmother and my Uncle Red for passing President Kennedy's legacy and idealism about the nobility of public service on to me and to my siblings and to my cousins. I hope that you enjoy the program. Thank you very much. Father George Sullivan is an old and dear friend, and as somebody who actually knew President Kennedy, we felt that it was most appropriate that this good Irish Catholic offer us a benediction of remembrance. Father George?
We gather today to honor and to thank our God for President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. In his inaugural address, he called us all. Now the trumpet summons us again, not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a call to battle, though in battle we are, but to carry the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out. Let us seek and act upon the belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of state, but from the hands of God. He urged us again to let both sides unite to heed in all corners of the earth the command of Isaiah to undo the heavy burdens and let the oppressed go free. And finally he said, with a good conscience our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth God's work must truly be our own. We make our prayer, Lord, in your name and in your spirit, now and always. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the fifth grade at King Science, Mr. Richard Throckmorton. Richard?
John Fitzgerald Kennedy, our 35th president, was a great man. His most famous quote is, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
The inspiration and guidance for today's ceremony originated with the Omaha Irish Cultural Center, and their president, John Corrigan, our next speaker, is here with us today. He is an accomplished attorney, prominent defender of the working man, tenacious in his defense of workers' right to organize and bargain collectively, something that President Kennedy stood for all of his life.
When Kennedy addressed the Irish Parliament, both houses of the Parliament, the Dáil Oireachtas, in his visit in June of 1963, Kennedy quoted 6 different literary figures. He quoted the biggies for sure: Yeats, Joyce, John Boyle O'Reilly, even George Bernard Shaw's comment, his famous line that other people see things as they are and ask why, but I dream of things that never were and say why not. Kennedy closed his speech with a visionary quote from Irish poet and mystic George William Russell, whom he did not name but referred to as a great poet. Russell believed that Ireland was an isle of destiny, that destiny will be glorious, and when our hour is come, we will have something to give to the world. Kennedy then told the Irish that Ireland's hour has come. You have something to give to the world, and that is a future with peace and freedom.
Richard Murphy of the Irish American Cultural Institute, President Emeritus, hails from County Cork. He was educated at University College Galway and at Queen's University, and for many years was the head of the biomedical research department at Creighton University. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Murphy.
I chose an epic poem written about an Irish officer in the Austro-Hungarian army. My steadfast friend, I didn't credit your death till your horse came home and her reins on the ground, your heart's blood on her back to the polished saddle. Where you sat, where you stood, I gave a leap to the door, a second leap to the gate, and a third on your horse. I clasped my hand quickly and started mad running as hard as I could to find you there, dead, by a low furze bush with no pope or bishop or clergy or priest to read a psalm over you, but a spent old woman who spread her cloak corner where your blood streamed from you. And I didn't stop to clean it, but I drank it from my palms.
Our next speaker represents some of the best and the brightest of young public servants, inspired by President Kennedy's example to enter political life. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Burke Harr.
Kennedy died some 8 years before I was born, but he had a great impact on me and my generation. He had a vision of what this country might do and might be. President Kennedy provided a sense of mission and ambition that together we can achieve something greater than ourselves. Kennedy's words, though, really strike home. It's, let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. Let us not seek to fix blame for the past. Let us accept responsibility for our own futures. Anymore, President Kennedy lives through his quotes, but also through his eternal flame, and that flame remains strong today. So thank you very much.
Senator Bob Christ, as a retired colonel of the United States Air Force, I'm proud to call him a friend, and I know that he is one of the major leaders of our state in the legislature. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Bob Christ.
For 13 days, the world waited, seemingly on the brink of nuclear war, and hoped for the peaceful resolution to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Kennedy responded by placing a naval blockade, which he referred to as a quarantine, always the diplomat, around Cuba. He also demanded the removal of the missiles and the destruction of the sites, recognizing that the crisis could easily escalate into nuclear war, and convinced by Kennedy's resolve, Khrushchev finally agreed to remove the missiles in return for the American pledge not to reinvade Cuba. If this is history to you, then you lived through it and you understand. If it's not, Google it. In an address to the American people, President Kennedy told them, this is June of 1963, for in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air, we all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. Thank you.
Our next speaker is a living example, one of many who have come to the fore over the period of the last 50 years as a result of the progress made in the arena of civil rights. It's with great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, that I give you Douglas County Treasurer John Ewing.
John F. Kennedy was a great American hero, someone that we can all look up to. We can look at his legacy. One of the things you have to look at, and you've heard a lot about his history, what I'd like to look at is what happened after his life. And if you look at John F. Kennedy and what he stood for and the partnerships he made with another great American hero, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you can see where John F. Kennedy is tied into the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1965, and the Civil Rights Act of 1968, which led to so many advances for African Americans and other minorities in this country to be able to participate fully in the American dream. There's still much to be done. But I believe it's important that we celebrate the progress that we have made. As you look at America today, you see that we have the first African American to ever be elected president of the United States of America. You see men and women who are in public service today because of John F. Kennedy and others during that time.
President Kennedy established in 1960 an independent wing of his campaign called Viva Kennedy. And Viva Kennedy was specifically set up to empower Americans of Hispanic descent, the Latino community, for the first time in national politics. Athena Ramos represents the best and the brightest of this next generation going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Athena Ramos.
And I quote JFK, "For this is a time for great courage and a time for challenge. Neither conformity nor complacency will do. Neither the fanatics nor the faint-hearted are needed. And our duty is to the nation and indeed to all mankind. Our duty is not merely the preservation of power, but the preservation of peace and freedom." Quoting JFK, "Immigration policy should be generous, it should be fair, it should be flexible. With such a policy, we can turn to the world and to our own past with clean hands and a clear conscience. The torch has been passed to us. We are the leaders of the next generation. Let us not forget the ideals that were expressed by President Kennedy and our ability to change our collective future. And as he said, let us not be petty when our cause is so great. Let us not quarrel amongst ourselves when our nation's future is at stake. Let us stand together with renewed confidence in our cause, united in the heritage of the past and our hopes for the future, and determined that this land that we all love shall lead mankind into new frontiers of peace and abundance." Thank you.
Dr. Tom Gutierrez is the director of the Center for Afghan Studies and the Dean of International Studies and Programs at UNO, and a Peace Corps veteran. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Gutierrez.
He gave it a name, a Peace Corps of talented young men and women who would go forth and make contributions in other countries. I always wanted to study abroad. It sounded like a pretty good idea to me. We carried the message of the United States in a way that had never been carried before. He absolutely seduced people. And he inspired them, not just young Americans, but young people all around the world. When my wife and I first arrived in Afghanistan as Peace Corps volunteers in 1964, every person who greeted us, literally, when they came up to us or we came to them, first thing they did to us, whether they could speak English or not, they would go, "We loved Kennedy." There was a reverse effect relating to the Peace Corps. It inspired many, many young people who had that opportunity to go out, to come back, and to make contributions in their communities here. This inspiration is something that we're talking about today, and we need to remember again and again as we look to the future and the needs of our society. I hope we all can put into perspective as we leave here today the impact that John Kennedy had on us, but also on the world. At that time, everybody looked to the United States as a leader in integrity, as a leader in collaboration, as a leader in progress. I think that is something by which we all are very privileged to remember John Kennedy by. Thank you very much.